Good evening, participants. Namaste, and welcome to you all in this another exciting session of CEO and HR. I am Ashish Banka from HR Sampark, and I have Shefali Sangal from Young Minds. Together, we have been collaborating and bringing this session to you. This is our eighth series, and we are thankful to all the participants for their encouraging response and favorable comments. Today we have a very special guest again, a very dignified personality and somebody whom I have known personally. So while we take this forward, a disclaimer: all the discussion done today is based on individual ideas, thoughts, relevance, and it's not specifically related to any company, individual, or industry. Today we have, and we are extremely privileged to have Dr. Pankaj Yamini. Dr. Pankaj Yamini is currently associated with Eurofins Analytics India Private Limited as Managing Director for India region since April 20. He is well-known professional, over 20 years of experience in industry of testing, certification. He was previously associated with Meridian Sciences as Managing Director for 3 years. Earlier, he has been associated with Ubisoft, Vipta Labs, and Joxy Labs. As an overall, he is responsible to manage operations, develop business, increase profitability for the companies, apart from focus on leadership development, succession planning, designing strategy, deep business and strategic C-level relationship. Dr. Pankaj focuses on people aspects with a keen interest and strongly believes they are the key to any success. Today, we are going to learn and unlearn the aspects of leadership, career planning, and crisis management from the leader itself. Welcome, Dr. Pankaj Javini, and we are privileged to have you on our chat series so much. Also to mention that Dr. Pankaj Javini is my previous MD of my previous company, Meridian Sciences. So while we strike the bond and take this discussion forward, I am personally very happy and taking this discussion forward while we ask my first question to you, sir, is that have you followed your passion in the professional field, and what would you hold responsible for your success?
So thank you, Ashish. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you all the listeners, viewers, for giving this precious time on a Sunday evening. I mean, what takes you alive in today's world is passion. So any profession, what do you choose if you're not aligned with the passion? So profession is meaningless. And for me, in this domain also, very interestingly, when I joined this industry way back in 2000, early 2000, I thought a company came to my campus interview and I thought I'm going to a pharmaceutical industry. So the company name was Laboratories Limited. And I thought anybody who has laboratories word must have been into pharma manufacturing. And incidentally, when I joined, it was the campus placement. So, those days, who care for where we are going? People are now more choosy about the industry. Do we do a research? But those days, way back in 2000, nobody does this all. So then I realized it's a different industry. And my initial thought at that time was that I came to wrong industry. I'm coming from an international business background and coming to testing laboratory field is highly scientific. But over the last 20 years, I believe what hooks me to this industry is the passion for knowledge. This industry is so unique, and I believe, Ashish, you have seen this with our earlier company as well, that once we are in a laboratory domain, people assume that we are the most knowledgeable of that product. So when you go and talk to a dairy company, people will assume that you know the dairy science better than them. And the next half an hour, when you are talking to a seafood company, he will assume that you are more experienced than them. And the next call, you'll be in an automotive industry, and he'll assume that you know how the car is being manufactured. So this industry keeps you on toes, and the passion for knowledge is one thing which keeps anybody alive. So my basic understanding, basic belief is, in whatever job you are, for example, you're in an HR job, unless you are passionate about people and understanding the humanities and science behind it, you'll never be successful. So passion plays the most critical role in our success.
Thank you so much, sir, for your opening thoughts on this. Life of an MD is stressful. Is it true? What are the current challenges which keeps you awake?
So I believe anybody's life in today's scenario is stressful, as long as you take that seriously. And I've been practicing this for a very long time, because I've been part of some of the business ventures in my career where we were starting from the scratch. So in one of my organization, I was on a really high note, and then I came to a different company, was not known in the field at all. So they were trying to put up their infrastructure in this in Indian context. So every time when you start yourself again from the scratch, it takes you more stressful because you're already assumed that success is by default. But what makes me little away from these stresses, I believe a very simple principle that whatever work is, you should pick up like your laptop bag. So once you are entering into the company, carry that laptop bag, which is full of your stress, your problems, your business issues, while you come into the organization at the main door. And while you're leaving out, leave the bag there. So I don't know whether you realize this or not. When you're part of our organization, I never carried my laptop back to home. Uh,
Correct.
so I never believe that you need 20 hours of working to be associated with work. So your brain is working anyways. Even if you're sleeping, you're thinking of something. So you don't really need to carry that stress of work outside your gate of the office. So carry it when you're coming in and leave it when you're going out. It's like your punching machine. So punch your problems in and punch your problems out. And that's keep the life simple.
That's a great tagline, sir. I think that would be one of the opening mantra for many of the people who are viewing this session. Also, to take it a bit forward in terms when we talk about this career span, and a couple of decades of career span, reaching to the epitome of a business angle. Do you have planned it, or it happened eventually? Like you keep on doing the good work, it happened, or did you really plan your career? Because many times we have seen good people do not have a great career, but some people eventually get a stroke of luck and they have a great career. So, what was for you?
So I believe what strike a good balance for me is a bit of luck, but then also good amount of hard work like anybody else. I don't see that you can get it by luck only. In my first job, when I was struggling really with the you came from a MBA degree in international business and you come to an organization where the work is highly scientific, you feel immediately that you're a mismatch in the organization, and that time you definitely put yourself into the situation where you work really hard and start learning and unlearning as you mentioned, and put your best thing. So I tell this to a lot of the young colleagues also, that your first 5 years or 10 years of your career is very important to really slog, uh, passion to learn, work overtime, not in terms of hours but in terms of efforts and energy. So my personal belief is 10 years of your professional life you are going to be slogging. You decide whether you want to slog in the first 10 years or the last 10 years. So people who will rest for the first 10 years will have a tough time in the last 10 years. And people who have a very interesting and very passionate first 10 years will really relax in the last 10 years. So I believe I was really lucky to, slog the first 10 years. And now my years are a little better. I won't say that it is, completely a cakewalk, but it's far better. You can see more macro things now rather than going to the finer details. And to choose. So everybody has a choice. Which 10 years you can sacrifice?
In terms particular situation where you are, and talking about and touching the nuances of COVID, it's the new normal. So what do you believe? It's the new normal or the new abnormal?
So I think it is, like everybody said, it's a new situation. Now, normal and abnormal is a very different perspective. For some people, I really feel bad who has lost their jobs. It is really abnormal because they have never thought they would be losing jobs, and everybody's industry was just going like any other year. So I remember 2020 is the catchphrase. Every company in this country or world has made some strategic plan for 2020. So it was such a good phrase to add, that plan 2020, strategy 2020. So I know since 2014-15, people are putting up this catchphrase as
Correct.
what I would be in 2020. Nobody felt that 2020 would be so different, so difficult. So nobody has actually planned. For 5 years, we planned for something else for 2020, and the time gave us a new, scenario altogether. So, but all businesses, I believe, looks for a new opportunity, a new change. So, in that scenario, if you see this change is real unlearning. So, all those years when I go to the HR conferences or other speakers talking about learn and unlearn, and I never realized that what unlearning could be. How do you unlearn something? When we learn it, imbibe into ourselves. Okay, when you learn a skill, you never lose it. You learn cycling at the early age. Today, also, if somebody asks you to ride a cycle, you'll be able to do that. So, how do you unlearn this? But 2020 has been a perfect time that what unlearn mean now is your business scenario is completely changed. So, what all strategies were put together for all 5 7 years that I'll do this and that in 2020. Now you need to unlearn. So all those action plan would not work today. And I mean that's the new normal. That's the new scenario which we all need to adjust for. But I see this as the bright time because this is a time when a lot of people like us who has been, thinking that people need to work across the bench, need to be next to my eyes, next to my cabin. I should see the progress reports. Now we know it's no more relevant. You can be sitting at home. I will not be monitoring you since 8:30 in the office, but you're still delivering. So this is a new normal, and I believe it is going to be there for some more years, even if the COVID situation become normal. But this new normal will not change.
Great. Taking this COVID further, you always have been you have been closely associated with HR in all your organizations. How do you comprehend leadership, and what do you believe is leadership all about?
So I don't know the real, marketing definition of a leadership, but I'll tell you, I'll try and reinvent some phrases based on what I learned in my 20 years career. So one very important theme which keep me as a leader engaged is, thirst for knowledge. So if you as a manager at any level is not delivering more support in terms of knowledge to your team, you become obsolete. So it's like a father and child. The child always look forward to the father saying he's more knowledgeable than me, and if I'm in trouble, I can ask him for a solution. So as a manager, you could be from the varied background, various technicalities, and you must be like people like us who has been into the management and marketing and all those things. But when we come to a technical organization, I can't really be in a situation where my technical head asks me a question and I say, guys, you know better than me. You decide, then you're not a leader. So, as a leader, thirst for knowledge is the first point. Uh, and you need to be also somebody who has the courage to take decisions. So I've seen some people when I coach the new leaders nowadays, I see people who hesitate that if I take a call and something went wrong, what would happen? I would be blamed. So should I take this call? And I see a lot of people going to his manager asking for advice. I'm in a fix. Should I do this? My belief is, failure and success is just two sides of a coin. You can never be on a probability side. There is always a 50-50% probability. So instead of worrying for the 50% probability that you'll fail, you'd rather take the time and guts and courage to take an action. And I believe every leader, good leader, whomsoever level you are, would praise you for that courage and timely action rather than a foolproof plan. So there is nothing like a foolproof. 2020 has, given us. We have all planned 2020 as a great year. This is not a foolproof year as all. So nobody knows. Nobody has a glass ball to see what the future will be, how your actions will result into a solution. The important is to take an action, and that makes you leader. If you take a call, on the right head, going straight to the team and saying you're immune, take a call. That makes you a good leader.
Thank you so much. I think that was an apt definition, and something which you have practically experienced. Also, what you said can be put up in a. I read somewhere in a very nice quote. A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And that's how taking that forward. Coming back, as a leader, we always so we will have managers and bosses. We cannot ignore them. They come as part and parcel. So, what do you think? Who helps in a career? Who helped in your career? A good boss or a terrible boss? You are a very good boss. So.
I really don't know. My teams will comment on that, but I believe everybody contribute to your career. Somebody who you see today as a terrible boss would be somebody who's pushing you hard. Somebody whom you see today as a nice boss is somebody who kept you in a very comfort zone. I believe both have played a good role in everybody's career. One who kept you in a comfort zone is actually sheltering you from today's problem, saying let this boy grow. So he's too new to the to the work, to the team. So I should protect him for some time. Somebody who's pushing you hard is the one who says he has to be grown up next year. So he has to see the ground realities. So the one who give you a kick on the back and the one who protect you from falling, both plays an important role because both keeps you moving. So if somebody is not allowing you to move, that's the one which you should afraid of. Somebody who says don't walk and don't move ahead is the one whom you should be really afraid of.
That's a very good thing, because most of the young people who join after campus, or the young students who are part of this session today, will definitely learn from this. Also, in terms when we talk about sales, is something is very important portfolio of, especially as a business leader. So, do you think every professional should think and act like a salesman or a businessman?
So honestly, when I started my career, when I was going through the education portfolios and all those things, and post my graduation in science, I was getting a lot of opportunities to be enrolled to the MBA sales, and sales that time was a
Correct.
big thing. Okay, and
Correct.
I was always thinking that this is not my forte. So I thought sales is like you hang a bag and move around and do the to get the business. Whereas marketing is more professional work, do more on the image building of the company and all those things. So I always thought that the marketing or something is more relevant. But when I went through my international business MBA and then to my PhDs and all those things, I realized that everything plays a part in your role. It's like you're like a car. So if you have a steering wheel and you really get fascinated with that emblem on the steering wheel saying this is the brand, but whatever is the situation, if you have a flat tire, you cannot really replace a tire with a wheel. So you never will be able to put your steering wheel with a good emblem to a tire and start running the car. So every domain plays an important role in your personality as a manager. And the best people are somebody who has seen the best and the worst of every job function. So I believe it is very important that somebody goes through the technical knowledge. For example, when I did my PhD, I did it only because when I'm talking to such platforms like today, people see good words, and then somebody asked me at the end of the conference saying, "What's your background?" I said, "I'm an MBA in international." Oh, sales guy. Okay. So I thought, okay. So now I need to shine my technical skills. So then I pursued my PhD, and then people started thinking, "Oh, doctor must be a technical person." I said, "No, I'm knowledgeable a little bit of both. So I'm a salesperson, also technical person." So I mean, that keeps you, awake. That harness every skills. So anything which you are leaving at the moment is good to have. Life is a continuous learning process, and it's never be short. So I did my PhD after 10 years of working. So you can anytime you can start learning a new skills, whether it's sales, marketing, finance, accounting, whether you're a technical person or something else, it will pay you. So knowledge is the only thing which never gets waste. So you'll get a definite earning for that course also sometime in your career.
Thank you so much. I think that will be really inspiration for many of us, also even in HR leaders, because generally after MBAs, learning through some certificate courses or through knowledgeable people, of your league. But it is very important that knowledge, it's very important we keep on learning. Another tagline which you have really reinstated is continuous learning. Very importantly, it's going forward. I have got some questions from audience which I will keep on incorporating since they are on not there. People want to understand, and most of I also never knew about this industry in terms of testing, either seafood testing or food testing or dairy testing. We would like you to just, for the larger audience, just in quick words, if you can summarize what is this industry all about, so that they can understand.
Good. So when you as a consumer take a product, anything, whether it is food or automobile or anything what you use as a consumer, you always, in the back of mind, you always feel that the product has to be safe, good
Right.
quality. So these two attributes actually become value of the product. It's not only the functional attribute what you buy for. For example, if you're buying a car, you do not only buy a car for a transport medium. You also buy a car that in case an accident, whether it will save myself or not. Although cars are not meant to be safeguarding you from an accident, but you that plays an important role. So as a consumer, all aspect which a product attribute apart from the functionality has to be checked by somebody else. Otherwise, how do manufacture? How do you, for example, if you go to a college you need to go to a college because there has to be somebody third person who give you knowledge and also assess your competency or the education and give you a certificate. So if you print your own mark sheet, it's not acceptable. So our industry is like the university or a test center for all the product what you consume or use, and we evaluate the quality and safety attribute of the product or the functionality of the product and give them a test report saying your product meets the requirement. And that's a sense of security, although we are not in a B2C segment where many of you may not be able to know us, in person. We are not giving a marketing or a brand ambassadors are not there, but we put our energy into more aspect, which is safeguarding you as a consumer. So this industry is very important, and this industry has been going on for almost 150 years. So it is not something which is new also. So in one of my last organization where I work, the company is almost 150 plus years old. So you can imagine that this industry is working so long. Uh, and as the consumer expectations will change, and as the standards will evaluate, the new requirements are coming, new products are coming. Those safety and quality will become more important and important, and that's where our industry helps you. So we employ almost everybody. If you're a food technologist, you have a role to play in the food safety. If you're an automobile engineer, you have to role to play in the automobile safety. If you're a computer expert, you're also into IT security. So beat anything in your consumer domain, we are there on a back to ensure that you handle a safe product.
I am sure after your answer, many people will, after my life, to get your phone number and email ID. So, but also very important point, this makes me very difficult because today I really worked hard for my questions. The interviews which we had did for all the other leaders, directly and indirectly, they have been impacted by this COVID. But today, whom I'm interviewing has been boosted by COVID because you're part of essential services. How does it feel in terms, does it make more difficult, or do you see more opportunities which you have to leverage since you are part of an essential commodity business where, it's important even this lockdown and going good?
So food has been always a essential commodity, whether it has been listed by somebody or not. So whether the government will list it in an essential commodity, but we all, internationally, everybody spend 40% of their money what you earn is on food. Whether today you're spending more on the essential food. So for example, what keeps you alive? You're not going to an outdoor, food and restaurants and all those things, but you still eat food. You can't really avoid. And that makes the things even more critical for us because now safety and quality is even more important. So although our industry is such that these rules and regulation, whether it's for the domestic market or for the international market, is very, very stringent. So food and pharma is generally more stringent than any other things because are directly impacting your health. You may stop, wearing clothes for some time, or may not be using it the official shirts for some time, but you will never be stop eating. So in that sense, I believe one good thing is that yes, people are now more. Even the companies who are working with us now are more, demanding about quality and timelines and all those things. The second is our own commitment to our food safety is more stronger now. We know what it makes. Our own families are now eating the same food which we test and certify, and we know these are safe to consume. At the same time, when you work in this environment where everybody is impacted, whether it is a industry employee or a food lab employee, both are going through the same, problem that you don't really want to go out of your home safe environment and go to a office environment and do the work. So it is even more challenging. But what keeps you going, what keeps my team at least going, is the strong commitment toward the human health. That we are not just the laboratory; we are also the one who keep these food factories running. Because unless they, ensure that the quality is there, they really can't push the product in the market. If they don't put the product in the market, we as a consumer will not be able to buy those products. We have seen in the early lockdown phase, if you remember, a lot of shops was going, the stock was going away, and then there's a hardship everybody has felt. So that keeps us moving. That we need to work, we convince our families as well that look, we are going for a noble cause. So we are not a Corona healthcare warrior, but we are not never less than that as well. So we ensure your food supplies are intact. So that keeps us motivated.
Thank you so much. I think that's very important because we really appreciate the kind of work the citizens have done, especially in terms of coronavirus and risking their health on the other priority. Also very important is that coming that since the business has been going good in terms, do you still feel as that there are many other leaders who are part of essential commodities whose business has got a boost, specifically e-commerce, pharma, food, which we have narrated. Many other contrary industries like tourism, airlines, are like hospitality, have all got bit of a back in terms of this, and we have been working very hard to do cost optimization, either be it overhead expenses or be it salary cost or be it another cost of a digitalization, any new product, business services. But the companies who are not into this, do you feel that cost optimization has to be done for them and in ways who are part of this essential services? What kind of cost optimization do you think can come and you can suggest the other colleagues who are a part of this particular industry?
So my understanding is every business is a different business, and some are getting boost, but then there is also cost increase compared to the earlier scenario. For example, when the laboratories are working, for example, our own company, when we are working, we're also ensuring that all our employees are staying in a secure place, not at their home places, because if they commute every day back from the communities, they'll also be at a risk of spreading the virus. So we keep them near to our offices and hotels and ensure that the whole hotel is booked for only for this activity. So costs are also going up, but at the same time, the priority at the moment for some of the businesses like us is to ensure we keep moving, we don't stop. Okay, because stopping is not only a impact on us, but also on our companies whom we are working for, and then the end user, end consumers. The some of the industry which you mentioned, for example, tourism and all, I'm sure they will be impacted for some more months. Uh, but there's also a time, as we were discussing about unlearning, is how do you change your business proposition? So can you reinvent a model? I'm seeing a lot of textile industry companies are now going into a different business altogether. So you see a lot of protective equipments are now coming up, whether it is for the healthcare workers, or it is for the normal consumers. Uh, all those who are working on this domain is actually the people who are working in the textile industry, because we are not buying any more the shirts or jackets or suits and all those things. So they repositioned themselves. Same as with the alcohol industry, for example. We know the consumption has gone down, but they have started putting all those alcohol into the hand sanitizers. So
Correct.
what is more important is, as a leader, is to identify the new opportunities, because I don't see this would be anything different than your earlier years when you feel that your market is getting saturated. So we have all
Correct.
seen this in earlier years as well. Uh, no business is constantly going up. Every business see a challenge, whether it's on a territory based or a city based or a country based. But you see every year a situation where the business is stagnant, and your leaders put their minds together saying, how do I take it up again? So I've been, used to growing 25%, 30%. This year it is only 5%. Now let's brainstorm what to be done. So this just the same year, what you need to do is to identify uh, what the consumer need now, or what the consumer would expect tomorrow. So, for example, in your catering industry, you have been all years curating a new dish to keep the
Correct.
things alive. Okay, now you need to design a new dish which maybe boost your immunity, will give you more fulfillness.
Correct.
I don't see this is too different. It is only become different when we close our minds, when we become too much suppressed by the environment, saying it is corona. It's a virus who's killing me. It's not the virus who's killing you. Actually, it's your own creativity which is killing you. And we have been used to do this new creative ideas, and India is known for it. So we are the best juggler or jugards in the world. So why not reinvent a new idea, new product, new services? And you can, and being a part of this testing industry, I see now every day people are coming with a new product saying this disinfectant is a unique product. This is a nano coating which kill virus. So people are so innovative, and you ask, okay, what you have been doing in this earlier? No, this is not my domain. I'm from XYZ industry, but now I'm doing this. So I see medical doctors coming to us saying there's a new UV disinfectant machine which I invented to sterilize the area. I said, you're a practitioner. No, but I know the problem now. As people say, the necessity is the origin for any new invention. So now they are full of necessities. You need to find out a new innovation and fix your business to the new rule.
That's so inspiring, Dr. Pankaj, because while back of the mind I was also comprehending to a personal life. Since all of us who are there, most of us are individual, salaried employees. So we are responsible for ourselves, our family, and then a group of employees as HRs. And some of them are individually responsible for self and their families. When it comes from you, where you are responsible for so many households at your workplace and so many employees and their households, being innovative is also comprehend on a personal angle, and that's very important aspect. Moving to this, and shifting now gear to HR, and since most of the HRs are there, and when had been your first interaction with HR, and what has been your experience with HR in the couple of decades which we are working on the companies?
So I would say the first decade, if I divide my career of 2 decades into two halves, the first decade was like a normal any staff which feel that what these guys are doing actually. So this is what you assume when you're in the
Correct.
early part of your career, saying, "Oh, these guys only do some training, uh, process my payroll, and these are things are automated nowadays or outsourced to somebody else." So what these guys actually do, and in those time when you look for your profitability and all those things, and you really can't cut down on your operational cost, you look at it. Okay, who's the additional headcount here? Okay, so the first decade is really not realizing the real potential. The second decade is where I realized that HR is like a glue. Okay, you're like a catalyst, and in any scientific reaction, the component of chemicals what you use is irrelevant to the quantity of catalyst what you add. So it's the catalyst which actually increase the pace of your reaction. And maybe some of the audience who has been from the science background would be able to relate that when you run a scientific experiment, you're not able to get the result. You keep on adding the catalyst to the reaction so that the end result is more faster, more easier to see, and all those things. So I see HR as a catalyst who sometimes when you put a new strategy or new practices, and you want this is for the benefit of the employees, not for the HR, definitely. But you need somebody to glue the strategy to the employee. You want somebody to outpace the process and to get me the result, whether it is coming good or bad, both. I don't see that whatever you put in the new strategy will always give you a good result. But if it is a failure, it should be failing tomorrow. So I have very clear strategy in my life. I say experiment today, fail tomorrow, rather than waiting for 10 decades and then you say it's a failure for everybody. So I mean, in that sense, HR plays a very important role where they'll be able to pass on the strategy communication, which sometimes we as the management are not very expressive. We are also sometimes, as you started the discussion saying, is the MD is more money minded and non-human and all those things. So we are not really like that, but sometimes being perceived because we are also busy in looking at too macro at too many things. So it's like your air traffic controller who sits in a very high tower all alone. And if you ask anybody that define a personality of an air traffic controller, and half of the people will struggle saying what really actually he's doing. So he's sitting in a tower and doing nothing, but he's the one who ensures that your planes are not crashing to each other. So sometimes we are aloof, we are sitting on an island and not accessible also, but we are also busy in ensuring that our teams are not heading to wrong ways. So HR plays a right, role in that ATC role where you are our navigators. You are the one who tells us which planes are going on which directions. And if you're not working, if you're not, apt to the role, we will never be able to identify whether my strategies are going in a right direction or wrong direction. So I see HR as a critical function in my second half of the career, and now I'm really pushing a lot to my HR team, saying, innovate. You're the best people to innovate and pass it on to the next team.
Thank you so much. I think that's very, very inspiring and motivational for all of us who are there on the today, because generally, people have come back, and when we have interacted with a lot of other HR leaders, everybody craves for a space in a boardroom, specifically having a say in a business strategy or a decision making. And when it comes from business leaders like you, it really, helps us to really boost our performance also. Taking this as a, again, a leading question is in terms, what is your expectation from a CHRO? Every company, will have, as you told, we are a catalyst, and everybody will have a main catalyst and a sub catalyst, a CHRO who is perceived to be one of, people's man, a bridge between management and the employees. What is your expectation, and what are the key qualities you believe that CHRO must, complement, and he should be perceived in that?
Sorry, Varun, the very important point is the person has to be connected to the employees. So
Okay.
sometime as we go up in the leadership plan, we also start losing our contact, and we start realizing on too many intermediate who's passing the information. So my expectation from anybody who's the head of HR is not to rely on the informers only. So you need to have a connect. You're only as good as you're connected to the employee. So if I put a CHRO as a tree, you're only as good as your roots are connected to you. So you can't really disconnect your roots, and your roots are your employees. So the accessibility, whether on a you're on a manager role or on a senior HR role, that's the most important point. Second is you need to also be very very authentic. So sometimes we see people and everybody experience good and bad managers or team members in your professional career, but sometimes we also see people who are not authentic, and you really start disconnecting with those employees or managers who are not authentic in responding. So if somebody comes to you asking for a help, and you know that you are not able to help in today's scenario, I know in current scenario, people, when you do a pay cut or retrenchment, uh, these are all part of the business. So nobody want to really do this. But if somebody is really doing it, also you need to be really authentic to the employee, saying this is the reason. Hang on with us. It's not for our salaries. We are not saving it for our pocket. We are saving it for us as a team. For example, when we were started, reviewing the situation of whether to do the pay cut or not, we started immuning some of the people, saying, okay, below this level it cannot be. And who gives this information to us as a leader? This is HR. So you need to tell us whom we should immune to. So if you want to immune your managers and say, oh, he'll leave, he's a critical resource,
Correct.
he's very critical to my business operation, immune him, and you say, okay, the staff down below, I can replace him any day. Don't worry, cut the salaries. So we as a decision maker, we also rely on you, all the HR team members. So you need to be really, really authentic in identify who's critically, impacted. And as I mentioned, we're sometimes busy in looking at the macro things. So you're the one who's in direct touch with your employees and all those things. So, and sometimes to pass on the hard message. If you're passing on the hard message, uh, don't be camouflage the discussion or the intent into only good words. Tell them we are going through a bad phase. Everybody knows it. And also give them a realistic hope, saying, let's hang on for this days, months, and we'll be out of this problem for sure. So we know that none of the business will stop. Take me in writing, some business will flourish too much, some things will go down, but even tourism will not close tomorrow. Okay, they'll
Correct.
bounce back. They'll bounce back for sure. So we as a human, whatever we have learned, will be now today we are suppressing our needs, saying no, I don't want to go out. But how long you can do this? You will start traveling again next year when the things will be better. Maybe when the vaccines are there, when we are out of this, trauma of COVID. And that time you need employees. So you need the same good people who have worked with you in past. So if you're taking a hard call as an HR, you need to communicate it with the authenticity, with the intent and clarity and all those things. So my expectation, two very clear expectation is, be connected and be authentic.
Hey, thank you so much. I think this will really help us to even refocus our vision, because what happens generally, over a period of time when we are working, and I'm saying this from the HR fraternity, we get bogged down, or we get zeroed into our own cocoon, so we cannot really see, and that this kind of sessions and this kind of advice really brings us that. I also realize that even though we are working from home, since it is a new normal, as you also mentioned, that we are used to people, so we don't know the other side of the situation. How is that person? Whether it is intentional, and very easy that we make opinions about it. that he's not responding over calls, so he's not attentive. So there can be a situation, working from home is not a very easy task. But going this also in the point that digitalization is very important. And now since many companies have adopted this, COVID-19 seems to accelerated the digital transformation in the workplace across industries. And how are the businesses, do you feel, are fast tracking this digital agenda, this crisis? Like, is this an opportunity? Because most of the people who have come across and they say, you have to bring a sensible solution or a product. We are happy to invest even in this crisis. So, do you believe this is the right time to crisis and get a good price of some deal, or do you feel, financial health is not good, so we should wait?
So I believe we as an Indian, we have been into transformation for some last 4 or 5 years. So for if you see your data consumption in last 4 or 5 years time is really, we were in 100 plus country level a few years back, and now we are, I believe, in world's third largest data consumption country. So the transformation has actually started happening already at the personal front. So we all have started engaging more with the smartphones and smart TVs and internet and all those things. The workplace digitalization is just happening now. And what makes it more easier is because we are so adapt to the personal space digitalization that many of us, for example, today when we are talking on this, if you ask me to do this on a Sunday evening last year, I would have said, why don't you doing a physical conference, right?
Correct.
But because even before the Corona crisis, we've been all doing this Zoom interaction with the family, friends, and all those things. Suddenly, when this came to the workplace, we said, yeah, we have been doing it. We know this. So it's only thing is now we'll be talking more of professional work rather than the personal things. So that's the change. So one is transformation, I believe, for India at least. It's really easy because one, we as an Indian are really very, very adaptive to new technologies, new science, new things. And, I was reading some of the articles when these Chinese app bans are going on, that some of these Chinese app companies, although the population is higher in China, the customer base are more higher in India. So that shows, the people who are inventing a product in some other countries are actually taking us as the market because we are more adaptive to things, new science technologies. So one for me, I believe the adaptation is really easy and fast for many of us. The second, if you talk to me on what should be the product, I believe uh, again, you need to invent solution rather than the price. So I see a lot of product which comes into a market and fails because it's either overpriced or not delivering the value. The
Correct.
product which actually sustain in the market is something which delivers a value and also solve a problem. So you only buy a thing when it solve a problem. Otherwise, it's a hobby. So your product also, hobby market is also a different product segment. But if you are actually designing a product in this current crisis time, you should design a product which solves a problem. And what better than solving a problem of current phase? So you see a lot of now, like Zoom. Now there are too many of these, web platforms which is made in India. When the Chinese apps are getting banned, immediately on the same night you see many Indian apps getting, launched again. So
Correct.
so this is so the I believe the you need to be on the edge. There is never a right time to do anything right. Every day is the right time. So what you need to see is keep your eyes and brain open, look at the opportunities around you, and see how your product is able to solve a problem. So if it is solving a problem, you're in.
I think that's a very, again, a great tagline again. So much of learning is happening in next. I do not realize we have just crossed 45 minutes when we are discussing. And, it's so important that, when we get ideas like this, it's very important that we need to focus on solution related. Also, while I get some questions and somebody asked about succession planning, one of the key roles which a business head is always focusing upon is either direct or indirect succession planning. We are keen to know, Dr. Pankaj, that how do you do succession planning? How do you identify he or she is somebody whom you will take it forward for the company? Because attrition is anyways a higher aspect, and at leadership levels, people do change, and there are a lot of other companies competitors. So how do you do? How do you identify? How do you succession planning? Can you give a, because you have done a succession planning for many of the organizations which I have come across. So maybe. thought over this?
So I believe succession planning is not a risk mitigation plan. So most of us, when we made a mistake, is take that succession planning as a risk mitigation plan. What if he moves, and then who will run the business or who
Right.
will run the function? So I mean, first point is that's the wrong way to do, because if you do that, one, you are definitely alerting that person that now I'm more important. Okay,
Correct.
because whenever you recruit somebody, you're trying to replace you. You coach the manager saying, "Hey, I want him to, take your things, and can you handhold
Correct.
him?" So you're risking yourself again too much. If he has not thought about it earlier, he maybe start thinking that, "Am I over budgeted now? Am I not relevant?" So a lot of insecurities might start coming in his mind, and if he's leaving in 5 years, he'll leave in 1 year now. So you've actually played a role of catalyst to his own, exit plan. So I don't see that as a risk mitigation. What I see, if you start from the bottom rather than from the top, a lot of people do succession planning from the top. You should do succession planning from the bottom and see whom you should promote. And people at the bottom of the pyramid are less insecure. So if you go to your organization chart and you start recruiting somebody at the bottom, nobody feel insecure because they say, yes, he's my colleague. But if you start recruiting somebody at the top, at least people from his level and his one level start insecure that what is happening. Okay, so my strategy always is recruit from the bottom. Ensure that you strengthen your base more, and then start promoting people from the bottom to one level up. And when you do that, you increase the association of the employee, because somebody whom you have promoted now from the level 4 to level 3 or level 7 to level 6 has started becoming seeing more value in his own deliverables, and he feel I'm more important to the organization, and that keeps him more longer time with the organization. And if somebody leaves, I believe professional period is an association. So it's a friendship. You add new friends, but you don't forget your old friends. Like I'm sure when you talk about your past employer where we were together, we relish that moment. So we never feel that that's a bad phase. So you just go to a new employer, make a new friends. Your old friends are still there. So why leave at that moment where why create as an employer a situation where your employees start feeling insecure? If he's leaving for a good opportunity, he'll still be there in the same environment, maybe going to a new company, learn some new skills, and come back to you some years later. But meanwhile, develop the bottom, make the bottom more strong.
Thank you so much, sir, for this answer. I knew this answer, but I asked this purposefully because participants. This while we all were come across as good leaders, this was one of the unique learning which I learned specifically personally from Dr. Gemini, because while we were having discussions, and this thought really amazed me, because we do more of a knee-jerk plan as a succession plan, which he mentioned, and he was always putting forward to make it as more of a dam, build your base stronger and then go up. So you will have people, might people see as an old school of thought, but it really works, because in our organizations, when we started this doing, there was attrition was even lesser. We went even less down in the attrition, because people used to see, in reinstate their faith. And when the top people used to see that the bottom people are being trusted, they used to trust the company more. And also to the point, a very interesting question which I brought and which remembered I want to ask, not naming but asking as a generic. Sales people's performance is very critical, and good behavior, more numbers, or more numbers, bad behavior. This tussle always goes on, and sales people are generally the star of the show in any organizations, all organizations.
Yes.
How do you believe, sales people, how as HR people specifically now, we need to acquire the right skill to train, to coach the salespeople, like at a entry level or at a mid managerial level? What is the right strategy you would advise to that?
So the most important point first is to understand that role, and I see a lot of time people recruit without understanding the role. So the conventional role of writing job description, which in the today's world has lost its relevance to some extent. We generally recruit people with knowing that he worked in X company, the X company is good, hire him. Okay, and most of the time we look at the brand names. He worked in Y company. Oh, Y company is also good. Recruit him. Okay, we don't really look at what the job responsibility we are looking for, and whether his skill sets are matching or can be upgraded to that level or not. So when you require X person in a field work, for example, sales team, you would require some people in the field work who require to be slogging their hours every day, meeting new people, generating the new base queries and all those things. You require those people as well, and then you need somebody who can vision the market, who can see what is coming up, what product can be designed, who can also handle these field staff to give the direction. You need those people as well, but those skill sets are different. So when you require a manager and when you require a field salesman, these skill sets are different. The mismatch happens when you recruit a field salesperson for a manager role and he's only in the field, never be helping the team, or when you recruit a manager cadre into a field work who always look for somebody to help but not working in the field. So I don't see this as an employee problem. It's more of a people who are recruiting. So I see this as an HR and a management problem where we took a wrong person for a wrong place. So as long as you're taking right person in right place, these problems will not arise. And as you rightly mentioned, it is really easy to quantify a performance of a salesperson. But again, you need to also look at in the scenario in which he is working. So if he's working in a new innovative product segment, the numbers are not important. The quantum of numbers is not important, but the entry into the market is important. But if you are going into a mass market, the quantum is number of numbers are important, but not the new product what he's getting. So every product, every segment has a different role to play, and that's where we need to evaluate them.
Thank you so much, sir. I knew this answer. Again, I will give a justification why. This was again a very unique quality because we remember when Dr. Pankaj joined us, and the entire sales team was, he comes from a business, he comes from a competitor, he knows the business, and he will be there. After we worked for almost a month, and then they will have to sales reviews and all. When I used to get feedback, I think he's very sympathetic. He's empathetic. He understands. उनको पता है सब. And when I used to hear, I used to where how come he's being so he's okay. I understand he will do it. The kind of confidence he used to show in the sales team, the entire sales team, whether it is a GMHR or AGMHR, that was tremendous. And at that time, I had a personal learning that it's very easy, as he correctly said, that to quantify. You nahi kar raha, aap bekar ho. But to really go back and heart lies with the sales people who really slog day and night to and definitely then they come back and some people say we are the people who are getting your salary, so we agree. तो ये भी बात सही है. Also, moving to the end of this discussion, a very important question for the students. Since you have been very close to the student fraternity and you have been interacting with students a lot, what advice do you give to the students who were in the final year, campus have gone down, and offers were revoked? What advice do you give to the students? How do they come out from this?
So I believe I gave a piece of it in the beginning of the discussion also that your first job should not be the one where you get paid well. So your first job should be the place where they allow you to learn well. Okay? So it's very important when you're looking for a job. Although I am working for last now many years into the multinational company, but I feel the first job should not be in a multinational company. Okay, because the structure is so set that people expect you to start delivering from the first day. There is always as I mentioned, job responsibility set for you, and you will be, accustomed to that one. You'll never be able to learn new things. So go to an Indian company, go to somebody who will pay you less but wanted you to deliver 5 people work. Where I remember in the first, initial working period, I had a good learning of doing every work. So they say, but there's also you need to do. So you start learning every function, and that's keep your, that define your skill set. When we are in the beginning phase of the period, and if you go to hardcore sales thing and you go to a multinational company, they'll give you definitely good salary and they give you good tools. It's all set, so your life will be much easier. But then you compartmentalize yourself into one set of skills, which is sales. You'll never be able to come out of, even after 20 years, if you want to come out, you say, but I know only sales, nothing else, because I've never, learned it. So to all my, friends in the early years of professional life, or if you're just about to pass out, I would recommend go to a company which is more like an entrepreneur, somebody who's lean, low number of people, who may not be able to give you good salary, but they will definitely give you a lot more exposure. They'll allow you to experiment whatever you're not supposed to do as well, and that's where your real managerial skills, because then you learn how to survive in a difficult scenario, how to boost your creativity to identify, even to convince your HR, for example, for something. You how to do a interpersonal relationship, because it's a small team. If you fight, whom where you go, you'll go. So I believe work in that stressful thing, and there's again I'm repeating myself, but this is what I said. Uh, you know, uh, you have to slog for 10 years. You decide which part of the year you want to slog. So if you slog for first 10 years, you will be having a very comfortable last 10 years. If you do a very easy first 10 years, you'll have a real tough time in the last 10 years, when there will be somebody who's quite junior to you, and he'll rule you saying, you do this, you don't know anything. So I mean, that's the motto. So decide which period you want to rest, and decide which period you want to work really hard.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Pankaj. I think that was really a indeed valuable piece of advice for our students. While we move to the last section of our chat series, and which we generally name as idiot questions, the only reason why, because these questions might not have much of advantage, but we want to know our leader better, whom we have been discussing, and we want to know that person better. So these are the questions. That's the reason. Before I move to those questions, a very important question: what is your vision? How do you see your life? Maybe very, we have heard that, we have come across that you are very philosophical as well in terms, and I have been knowing you personally. So, what do you see your life? What is life, and how do you see your life?
So it's very simple. What is life is to contain your expectations and work towards meeting those expectations. So you can make your life as hell as possible by raising your expectation that I should have an Audi and Mercedes and whatnot in my porch. Or you could be confining your needs to, I should have a respectable car which moves, would do not do a breakdown every day, should, so that I can commute every day. So your life is what you expect from. So if you expect too much and you don't have the resources to deliver, you'll make your life really difficult. If you can confine your need and gradually increase your needs, you can be really stress free. So your life could be as good as you want it to be. Somebody was showing me a video where it says, what your life is what you wanted it to be. So if you wanted your life to be happy, it is happy. If you wanted your life to be stressful, it is stressful. If it is not, it will be tomorrow, because you wanted it. So if you desperately want something, it would be. So make your life simple. You keep your expectation in control, and whatever you're putting a small milestone based increase in expectation, keep on achieving it, and then you're good to go.
Thank you so much. I think that's very important. Also for the audience, Dr. Gemini always used to tell the entire HR team, it's a very simple, HR is a very simple, don't complicate it. So he used to use this for many, always everything what you do is very simple, do not complicate it. The more you complicate it, the more you get entangled into. Moving to the set of the idiot questions, the first question is, how do you self-motivate?
Also, self motivation for me is learning something new. For example, I was when the COVID scenario hits at us, everybody start expecting that we would coach them on how the virus behaved. And to do that, I need to do a lot of reading, because before my technical person says, I'm not a virologist, and can you figure it out? I need to read. So what keeps me motivated is learning something new every day. So if I don't do a new learning, a new skill, I do a programming on IT as well. So I don't know whether you know this or not, but our earlier when we worked together, the IT team was really good. And that time they were talking about, one of our colleagues was talking about Alexa, and I said, hey, what it is? I don't know this. And he said, oh, this can do this, this, this. And I bought an Alexa and start programming Alexa skills. So then I told him, look, this is the new skills which I made. He said, how did you do that? You're not an IT person. I said, I spent really good Saturdays, Sundays learning this. So you find out the new things and start learning it. That keeps you happy and motivated.
Great. What is your hobby?
So my hobby is farming. So I do a lot of cultivation and farming food, because it's a passion area for me. So I think when you talk about safety, you can easily tell farmer that they should not use pesticide, they should not do this. Why you're doing this? As a consumer, you demand a lot of things. But if you invest your time into growing a sapling, a plant, or a flower, you know how much pain it goes. And when the some insect come and bite your tree or destroy it, what pain it gives. So I believe, doing these things on your own. So I do a lot of farming. So I have a farmhouse in Delhi NCR also, which I'm quite far off now. But I do now in Bangalore. The house which I have a small kitchen garden, and I do it here as well.
That's very interesting. What is your favorite food?
So I'm a very boring person in food. I love paratha and aloo ki sabji, or a very conventional Indian food. I'm not somebody who look for a foreign dishes or an international cuisine. I love Indian food, the homemade mama's paratha or something like that.
Great. What dismisses you at a workplace? Anything which you don't like at a workplace? Specific.
Somebody who does not value time, somebody who's not very punctual. So I don't know whether you remember this or not, but when I joined the organization where we worked together. I used to come almost half an hour before the scheduled time. And one day you gave me the key that, sir, this is the main door key. I realized, okay, now I'm coming too early to the office. And this is the HR indication that why don't you open the main door on your own? But I really believe, that being on time is the thing which is the utmost important, because this gives respect to the organization, your team, that if you're not on time, if you're not valuing the time, time will never value you. So for me, somebody who pissed me is if you schedule a meeting at X, I'll be X minus 10 minutes on the meeting room or on a WebEx. And I really feel pity for somebody who don't value that.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very, very keen quality, and I have come across as on a serious note many leaders who, due to their in terms of mother meetings, or in terms of indulgence to a lot of other things, somehow gets not intentionally, but this is again for the audience. Mr. Gemini had back-to-back meeting always, and always he was on time, and any meeting if we say at 5, he's always at 5. So last question of this, and then I will put ask Shefali if she has more questions. If Dr. Pankaj Gemini would have not been MD of X company, or what he would have been, an alternative career.
So I would have been a teacher or a farmer. So I love teaching. I still do a lot of these things and it has been since my school days. So I've been doing the coaching classes. When I was in 10th standard, I was coaching the 9th grade students on a formal coaching time. So it was not the passion one. It was a way of earning a pocket money. So if I have not been into this domain, I could have been into the teaching profession or a farmer. I still love cultivating every new thing which you see in the, whether it is broccoli or lettuce leaves and all those things. I cultivated in my own farm. So I love growing new things. So either a farmer or a teacher.
Thank you so much, Pankaj Gemini. This is great. I will not have even shorter words to never looked out. Shefali, would you like to ask any more questions to Dr. Pankaj Gemini?
Thank you, Ashish. I don't have any question because the interview was, and the way Dr. Pankaj was talking, it was just superb. And I would like to acknowledge very simple man and very clear in his thoughts. What is required from HR? What is required from sales? If sales is not able to perform, that means there is a miscommunication between the HR and the management. I feel that people always play a blame game, blaming the management, blaming that team ने perform नहीं किया, please change the team, HR ने अपना ठीक काम नहीं किया. But he was very clear in his thoughts. No, it's between the management and the HR. There was a communication gap. There was some misunderstanding. So I really like that. And while talking to you, while listening to you, I was just viewing your profile also. So you have been into end-to-end food industry, nutrition, food testing, and all these things. I think these things are very close to me, very close to Ashish. So I honestly enjoyed this session, and it is always good to know a CEO's perspective, because we normally into HR industry, what happens is that we think and we understand things from our point of view. But as in the beginning, Ashish very well mentioned that the objective of this series is to let people know that the CEOs and MDs are also normal humans. So that
Yeah.
very well suffices the topic. And thank you so much for beautifully answering these questions. That adds a lot of value to our lives also. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you so much, Shefali, for your views. And also, to sum up this, there are a lot of learnings. Maybe definitely when I give a write-up in social media, I will try to incorporate all the taglines used by Dr. Pankaj. One important thing which I would like to, bring while discussing with Dr. Pankaj. At a point, I was very nervous because, seeing him and speaking to him, though he comes. One important thing which I learned today is everybody's heart is on the right place. You just need to realize that. And when Dr. Pankaj was, expressing himself, his views, all of us, I get a lot of responses. People are saying, we are not able to believe. It will take some time for people to believe that an MD or a CEO also has the right heart in right place. And we are indebted and so privileged, Dr. Pankaj sir, that you have come and you have accepted our invitation on a short notice and given your valuable 1 hour in a Sunday evening. A great learning, I think, the entire objective, which you also believe that if you're able to help anybody, even one person in your entire, day, that sorts out. And we are truly indebted. Thank you so much for your views, and we'll keep connecting. Great young minds, and HR Sampark is great privilege to have you again. And we, thank you from the bottom of the heart for taking this.
Thank you for having me here. And one last message to your listeners that, as you mentioned, that the MDs and CEOs are also human. Go and reach out to them. Sometimes we also feel alone sitting in our cubicles. So go and reach out, knock the door, and ask, "Can I have a coffee together?" And then none of the MD, I believe, I know the fraternity now, being part of this for some time. We all would love to hear your voices, and as an employee, sometimes people feel that we are not human, but we really want to have a cup of coffee with any of you. So please knock the door of your MD. Go and ask him, can we have a coffee, and have a coffee together. So I mean, that would be a good icebreaker.
Thank you so much. I think that's a great initiative. We will definitely work upon this idea, Shefali. Dr. Pankaj has given us some idea to work on this. And thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shefali.
I'm flying to Bangalore very soon, sir, for a cup of coffee.
Sure, most welcome. Most welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks, Shefali.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much, all the participants.